And hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever it is from wherever you are watching, and welcome to our June Serverless Days Amsterdam meetup, where we've got a couple of amazing talks coming up. Mark, hello there.
Hello, Stace. Good to see you again, and good to do this again. It's been a while, at least for
It
me.
has been a while since I've seen you on video. It's awesome to have you back. We've missed you.
Thank you. Yeah, and unfortunately, I also missed the hybrid meeting last time. I really hope I can make it next time, though. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to real life meetings again. But yeah, for today, it's online again.
It is, and it's nice being able to do both the online and the hybrid. I'm looking forward to the next one. That's on 6th of July, if my memory serves me correctly. A hybrid location still to be determined.
Exactly. Yeah, we still need to do some work for that, but I'm sure that will be a nice one again. Definitely. Yeah. So how was your day today, Stace? I mean, I think you've been very, very busy, right?
I've been really busy today. I've just been speaking at JS World in Amsterdam, and it is the biggest stage I have ever spoken on in my life. It was absolutely superb.
Wow.
It's giant screens behind you, wraparound screens going around the corners. It was an experience, even when GitHub died on me.
It sounds a bit terrifying, but also really cool. So yeah, it's great that you're doing this. I hope you need it. Is it recorded as well?
I think it's recorded. I'm not sure when it's going to come out though.
All right.
But,
I'll keep an eye on it. All right. So let's have a look at the program for today. Let's add this to the stream. So welcome everybody for this online meetup again. Wrong screen. Meetup edition, online meetup edition. Usually the first Wednesday of the month, unless there's some kind of a holiday or something that clashes with it. If you are joining us here, it's probably on YouTube or Twitch, but we also invite you to our Discord server, so you can ask questions there, you can interact with other members of the community, so please follow this link if you want to connect with us on Discord. And if you do want to comment either on Discord or YouTube or wherever you are, please follow our code of conduct, which you can read here on our website. The agenda for today, although there will be a small switch. First, we start with some community news. Then we'll not have Bruce. Bruce will be our latest speaker because we still have to find him. But our first speaker will be Vlad. But let's continue first with the community news. We have two items. The first one is Bit Project. Maybe you've heard about them, maybe not. They are a US-based organization, started mostly with students who created several bootcamps, and they have quite a successful bootcamp around serverless. They've done it now for 2 years, so I think this is now their second year. So they are. Yeah, they created this bootcamp mostly for students, but also for other people, maybe for people who are switching careers and want to move into tech. But they're desperately looking for mentors. So if you're a bit familiar with Azure and with JavaScript, because that's their focus, I really want to ask you to please go to this link, bitproject.org/mentor. You can read a bit about the program, about the bootcamp, and apply for a mentor. I've done it myself last year. I don't have the time for this year, so I'm definitely hoping that some of you can stand up and help them, because it's a really nice group of people.
And if you have the ability to mentor somebody, if you've got the time and can do this, it is such an amazing feeling when you see what the people that you're mentoring achieve something. It's an absolutely fantastic feeling.
Exactly. Yeah, and this bootcamp is also a bit differently structured than before, because last year's it was really like a one-to-one mentorship. So every mentor had just one student. They also do that now, but they also have, let's say, a global community program, and they're mostly looking for mentors for that specific track. So that means you're not tied to just one mentee, one student, but you have a couple of let's say touch points where some other people in the program can connect with you and can ask you for questions or career advice and stuff like that. All right, so that was the first one. Then the other community news is that there will be a great conference coming up this month, 30th of June. It's called Azure Lowlands. Follow this link. I also have it here, I guess. Yeah, this is the one. Azure Lowlands. It will be in Utrecht again. I think it was also there last time. So we are partnering with them as a community member, and we can give you some discounts on tickets. So it's a hybrid event, so you can go there in real life. And if you want to go there, the regular price of in-person tickets is 175 euros, but we can get you a 10% discount on that. If you want to attend online, it's normally 25 euros, but with the discount code, you can attend for free online. I'll put some links in the chat very soon about this, so you can read all about it.
Yeah, that's also going to be an awesome day. Speaking as a completely biased person helping organize it, but we have a fantastic selection of speakers. They say we've got the community stand. We've got some amazing sponsors that are going to help us, because without that, we couldn't do it.
Exactly.
And as well as the talks throughout the day, it's Azure Lowlands. So we're really going for the festival atmosphere here, with live music at the start, at lunch. And then after the talks are finished and after Dylan has done his amazing thing, if you've never seen Dylan give a musical closing keynote, you
Never
need
live.
to come to this.
Exactly. Yeah, I want to see this. Yes.
Yeah, and then we go to a little bit of live music with a barbecue to end the day in the evening. So it's going to be a spectacular day. So
yeah, I think it's going to be amazing. So yeah, please attend. All right, let's continue from here. So again, I'll post these links in the chat, so you can actually click on them. And last but not least, if you want to help us out, if you either want to do a session, and you want to speak on a topic, or if you want to help organize these events, or have any other ideas how we can maybe change the meetup, or want to even help with a bigger conference, please let us know and get in touch, either via email or Twitter, or again Discord, because we would love to hear from you. All right. So I think that's all the slides there is. So it's time to bring in Vlad now. Let's remove this and add Vlad. Hey, Vlad, welcome.
hey, Vlad,
Hello.
welcome.
Nice to see you.
Definitely nice to you, yeah. So I think you spoke with one of our other organizers last time, right? During one of our last events,
Yeah.
and you actually wanted to help out as well, not only as a speaker as you're doing now, but also with co-hosting, right?
Maybe.
Did I misunderstood? Oh. No, but yeah. Anyway, Vlad, I'm very happy that you want to give your session here today. So I will add your slides now to the stream. So take it away.
Yeah, success. Have fun.
Thanks. Yeah, for me, it's first online experience. I know how to do it offline, but online it's a bit weird, honestly. Yeah, but let's kick it off. So today I will be talking about 12-factor applications. It's a set of principles for building modern applications. If you know about them, then probably I will not tell you anything new. But if you don't know about these 12-factor apps principles, I hope you will learn something today. A few words about me. I'm a software architect, but I have .NET background, and I was doing Azure development. I'm really like DevOps doer and automation fan. Weird fact about me that I use Dvorak layout. Nobody does, but I do. And I reboot computer to exit Vim because I have no idea how to do it otherwise. And I speak 3 languages for now. Looking forward to learn Dutch. Yeah, so we will learn about all these things which you can read on the screen now. So what's the agenda? First, let's talk about why we care about these 12-factor applications. Then let's talk about factors themselves. And then at the end, I will give you also some bonus factor, which is required to have applications built correctly. So why do we care about something which is covered by these 12 factors? First, we would like to build high quality applications. Also, we would like to achieve reproducibility, meaning like whatever we do, we know the result in advance. So if we did it 5 times, sixth time, it will be the same. Automation. Uh, yeah, if we do everything manually, it's really hard to predict the outcome, and we really want to have this reproducibility and quality in place. So we would like to automate stuff, and overall, it's much less pain in the development process. Like we would be focused on developing application, not solving different issues with the application. So let's start with the first principle: code base. One code base, tracked and version control, many deploys. And I have a story uh, about that. It's a little of side story, but I hope it's a bit of fun. So I was working as a subcontractor, and I came to the company to take over the project. Previous freelancer left, and they told that they have urgent stuff to be done, and they need to get it done as fast as they can. I told them, no problem, just give me a repository. And they gave me a repo, which was completely empty. I was really confused about that, and they definitely did not follow this first principle that you need to have your code base stored in Git. So simple practical conclusion for this first factor: use source control for your code base. And about many deploys, we will cover on next slides. Second factor, dependencies. If you're building an application, you would like to have things reproducible. So you should explicitly declare and isolate your dependencies. Yeah, this is how dependencies look like. As you can see, like node modules, woo, gravity, heavy. Yeah, first I have a story about that. I worked at some company, and then I met with some people who were working on supercomputer, and they were scientists, and they were doing Python. And I figured out that actually the core of their business was done in Python, in the Python module, which was not in Git repository, and it was on supercomputer, the one single copy of it. It was on production, and it was hidden within virtual environment. So I could potentially drop virtual environment because it's easily reproducible, recreatable, right? But then I would drop the whole core logic of their supercomputer, and this situation can appear. But lucky me and lucky them, nobody broke anything. It was in place when I left. After that, I have no idea. So what does it mean in practice about dependencies? So for example, yeah, in different language stacks, we need to use some package manager, which is very typical nowadays. But also we need to lock the dependencies. So we need to use these lock files. So dependencies are locked, very specific versions of them, and you should not do any global installation of the packages. In that case, you build it once, it worked. You build it 100 times, you build it in a year, it will still work because the versions are exactly the same. Also, Docker can help with this because if you just pack it into the Docker image, it stays the same, right? Third factor, config. So you need to store config in the environment. Uh, let's look into the example. So if you have this piece of the code in your application, it means that you switch programmatically between web environment or not web environment. So if your HCP host is localhost, you assume that, okay, it's actually not web. This is very bad practice because you have configuration implemented as a code in your application, which is horrible. You have no control over that after you pack it into a Docker image, for example. And if you have this situation with many different environment configurations, it's also not very good, because what if you have some ephemeral environment to spin up quickly, or some hotfix environment, but you stick to production and staging, right? It doesn't work well. So what you need to do, let's see how it works. For example, if you do local development, yes, you can have local config file with some values there, but then you can have environment variables, and also potentially you can use command line arguments. And those are coming from environment, from runtime, but file comes with the packed application. So on production, you can have the same file, but different environment variables and different command line arguments. And you don't need to change the code of your application. It's just done during the deploy. I will have a nice diagram a bit later. So yeah, for managing the config, you can have many different tools. If you deploy something to Kubernetes, you can easily inject environment variables. If you use Octopus deploy, actually Octopus deploy merges your application with the config, and then it deploys it there. Or you just use cloud. And in Azure, you can also, I'm more specified on Azure, so I elaborated a bit on Azure. In Azure, you can inject environment variables, or you can use separate resource for this Azure resource, which is Azure App Configuration. But you don't have to use it. Do whatever you want, but don't store configuration in your application. Fourth factor, backend services. Treat backend services as attached resources. So, for example, if this we see in our configuration that we have document DB URL, secret, that's how we need to do it. Because in that case, we just swap the configuration and we swap the backend service. For example, locally we were developing on local machine with some local installation, and when we deploy to staging, we just inject configuration on the fly, and we work with staging. And the fifth factor, build, release, run. We should strictly separate build and run stages. So this is, I believe, the main factor of these 12 factors. And actually, it joins concepts from other factors as well, previous factors which we already covered. Let's imagine we have a developer who develops an application. So developer commits the source code to the repository. It's all development time, right? And then repository automatically builds the code. This is CI. So we have a build artifact as the result of the build. Then we have CD part. So CI stands for continuous integration. So we continuously build and test things. But then CD, continuous deployment, we would like to deploy our application. So we take config, which is separate. We take the build artifact, we put them together, and we've got our release as the combination of config and build artifact. And then we have runtime, server, cloud server, whatever, and we deploy it there, the release artifact. So if we look in a bit of details in this process, so let's see again. we have code in the repository. It has this commit hash. And then we build it, and we've got build artifact version package 100. Then we push this package to the packages repo, and it's stored there with this version. Then we have a release. For release, we take config version ABC. Then we merge package and the config, and we've got release R100. Then, inside we have package 100 and ABC configuration. Then we might push this release artifact into release repo. For example, if it's for example, in Octopus deploy, it's implicitly saved as a release artifact, but usually we don't really see these release artifacts. And then we can deploy it to the production R100. But then let's say later we don't want to rebuild it, but we realized that we need to redeploy it. So we don't need to change the code, we don't need to rebuild it, we don't need to release it again. We can just simply redeploy this release artifact. It's simple. So one code, many deploys. Maybe we would like to deploy it to the second server because we are scaling out, right? Or let's imagine such situation that we have the same package in the repo, but for some reason we decided to change the config. Maybe, I don't know, there was some mistake in the config, or maybe we want to change it for some reason. Connection string was changed, or external URL was changed, or we would like to reconfigure our application, configure, I don't know, timeouts instead of 30 seconds, 15 seconds or 60 seconds. So we take the same package from the repo. We take different configuration. It's not ABC, it's DEF at the moment. And then we don't need to change the code and rebuild anything. We just take the existing build artifact, we combine it together with different configuration, and we've got release 100A. And then we, again, store it as the release artifact, and then we deploy it to production. And in runtime, we've got exactly the same workload, but with different configuration. Okay, let's move on to the factor number 6, processes. We need to execute the application as one or more stateless processes. Let's look at the picture. So let's say we have one server. It's shown as a server on the picture, but it can be obviously cloud or serverless application even. But let's look into details. This particular example, let's say we have IIS, and on IIS we have two applications running. And then let's say, okay, this is just an example of applications, or we can have API service. But let's see what happens. We have a user, we have load balancer, and we have node 1 of the application, which talks to Redis cache. And then we have more users coming to use our application. And this connection becomes a bottleneck, like node 1 cannot handle the load, so we need to spin up node 2, and it can be automatically spun up. Or, for example, node 1 crashes and it's automatically started, the node 2 is started. And if application is stateless, it's a problem. We can lose some data, or there can be some problem with the load balancer, because if one request comes to first node and then another one to the node 2, if there's state, then it will be a problem. Or we can fix this problem by session pinning on the load balancer, but actually we would be not solving the problem, we would be just shifting the problem to other place, because load balancer is there to help us to distribute the load, not to manage all these sticky sessions and this kind of stuff. So if we have processes, we can easily scale out our application, and we can easily stop and restart the application without being worried about data loss. So we can use, Microsoft Azure functions or Amazon Lambda functions, and this is a pure serverless solution then. But if we would like to go serverless, we don't control the processes, right? But we control our code. And in our code, all the functionality should be stateless. In that case, serverless functions can be easily scaled out. Instead of one instance of the function, we can have 100 next second, because there is a huge load to our application. And to be able to handle this load to scale out quickly, we need to have no state in the application. Also, if we do if we use NoSQL or streaming of data, we really need to have stateless process. If we fan out our load from Kafka streams to many instances of the application, or if we use Cassandra as NoSQL database and we have different partitions and we would like to use the power of NoSQL that it distributes the data, the load, and it's really performant. But to be able to use it, we also need to support it in our applications. And also, if we use storage queue or service bus in Azure, it doesn't make sense to be able only to process incoming streams only in one thread by one, not thread, in one process, in one stream as a one consumer. It makes sense to scale, but to scale, we need to have stateless processes. Factor number 7, expert services via port binding. Actually, I believe this factor was defined long time ago, so nowadays it's quite clear why and what we need to do. So let's say on local machine, we have application 1 running on port number 44393, and we have application 2. We develop 2 applications at the same time on different port. But those ports, they don't make sense in production environments. And on CI, if we do some integration tests, for example, we can run it on port 8080. But on production, if it's in Docker, we can expose application on port 5000. But then externally, it might be exposed on default port 80, which is used by the browser, right? So if we do it, even if we do it with just application itself or based on Docker, we definitely need to do port binding to be able to change the ports of our application to expose it in different manner in different environments. Factor number 8, concurrency, scale out via the process model. Actually, we briefly covered it already in the factor number, I don't remember which one, about the process. So another simple example. If we have Azure function, it produces a message. Okay, it's not a message, it's a queue, right? And this queue can be consumed by 3 functions in parallel. And it will be consumed 3 times faster because they process the queue in parallel. So if we would like to fan out, we would like to scale. And to scale, we do it via the process model. Yeah, and for this, again, we can use serverless, we can do Kubernetes, but it's all possible, all the scaling out possible only because we do process, we scale out by process, and we have stateless process. Factor number 9, disposability, which says that maximum robustness with fast startup and graceful shutdown. It should be done in our application. Why? Because if we scale out quickly, we should be able to scale down as well. And to scale down, we should have graceful shutdown. But to scale, sorry, it's not scale down, it's scale out and scale in. It's not vertical scaling, it's horizontal scaling by many processes in parallel. So yeah, to make it us able to do it, we need our applications to start very fast, especially if it's serverless. It should start like in a second, and it should also gracefully shut down when we don't need this instance anymore. So yeah, process can be killed at any time. We should minimize startup time and should shut down gracefully without losing any information. So when the runtime says shut down the application should save something if it's still processing some jobs, and then it should not lose any important information. Again, same technologies are usually relevant to this factor. So we don't really need to implement much by ourselves, right? We can just use serverless and Kubernetes. Factor number 10, devproparity. We need to keep development, staging, and production as similar as possible. Why is that? Well, because, for example, if we have local and development environment, staging environment, production environment, very different, we can get in some troubles. Let's see. Okay, wait a second. Yeah, for example, if we develop locally on, I don't know, SQL Express, and we deploy on enterprise SQL to the cloud, they might have different functionality or different limitations or different something. Or if we develop on local, local emulators, and we never test it until we get to production. For example, we have only local and production environment. In that case, if we do locally our development on emulators, we can be quite surprised when we deploy to production and it doesn't work there. So to avoid surprises, we need to meet the potential problematic situations earlier. This is actually also a shift left mindset. So earlier we face issues in the same environment as production, better. So yeah, following these principles and devproparity, configuration, process scalability, actually we can say that if you are not following these 12 factor application principles, if you're doing it in old school waterfallish traditional way, so actually all these mindsets, not using DevOps, doing it in old way, you probably would be able to deploy at the end of iteration, which is 3 weeks iteration probably, because it's like takes days to deploy. And also 12 factor applications principles They help to have to support DevOps mentality in sense of like people who develop serverless applications should run them as well. They shouldn't pass it over to ops and then ops deploy the application. And also just to to have similar environments with traditional applications. If it's not automated much, if we don't do proper CI/CD with one build, many deploys with configuration injection, uh, I can assume that we probably don't do environments properly as well. So potentially all the environments are quite divergent, and in 12-factor applications, environments are similar as possible, because otherwise it's not you are not doing 12-factor applications. So for this, you really need to do infrastructure as a code, or if you use Docker for your workloads, you are in control of your runtime for your applications. Factor number 11. You should treat logs as event streams. Well, actually, for example, if you do this in your .NET application, you just write to the console. That's how you do logs. Or you can use Logger to log errors. Uh, the second option with Logger, it will just produce some event, which will have some additional metadata and parameters. It's as you can see, ID can be read as a JSON property separately, and then it can be analyzed by log analytics services or by application performance monitoring services. Console write line will also work if you just take std out and stdr to the log, but better to do structure logging. And that's it. From your application, you should care about logging only in that way. Just one line of code in your application, and you shouldn't care where does it go, because it should be just considered as the side effect of your application, and the application shouldn't care where it goes. So for example, if we use Elastic Stack on our servers, we can have bits, file bits, which collects all the local logs and sends them to Logstash, and then Logstash stores them in Elasticsearch, and then Kibana is used to query and to analyze logs. But if we do it in Azure environment, for example, we have Azure Function Application. In Azure Function Application, we only have one line: logger, log error. That's it. And then it automatically is being sent to Application Insights, being ingested into Log Analytics workspace, and then we can analyze it with Azure Monitor, with Log Analytics, with Kusto queries. Like, it's all work automatically out of the box, and it's possible because actually Azure respects this factor, and also Azure functions are designed in such a way that they also support this 11th factor for logs, that we should treat logs as the just stream of events. And the last but not least factor, number 12, admin processes. We should run admin or management tasks as one-off processes. What does it mean? Let's take such an example. We need to make some changes in production. Sometimes what people do, they just get production access, they go to the Azure portal or to the production server directly, and they change stuff there. It's not about deployment, it's about some changes. I don't know, changes in local config files, changes in data in databases, uh, some changes which affect the production. But yeah, let's imagine that we have a developer who works on the computer and then goes directly changes something. So you shouldn't do it. It should be done in completely different way. In that case, yeah, let's see the way first. So we have a developer working on a local machine, and then developer commits some changes to the repo. And then these changes go through the usual CI pipeline. So changes are built, tested, and stored as the build artifact. Then we have CD. We can inject config to our build artifact. We've got a release, and then we have runtime, and we run this released migration to runtime. As you can see, this is no difference from how we develop the application itself. But this can be a migration. So for example, if you develop .NET applications, if you use SQL Server, you definitely know entity framework migrations. And they are a perfect example of implementation of this factor. So entity framework migrations are as a code. They are part of the application. They are part of the build artifact. They are, so first they are checked into the repo, then they are built, and then config connection string to particular SQL server is injected, and then they are being run in the runtime when application starts. Usually it happens like this. But for example, if you need to fix some data on production, you don't just go to production database and change data there. You don't just open Storage Explorer and go to, I don't know, table storage. You don't just go to Cosmos DB Explorer and to change information there manually. You can also implement some simple console application, for example, which follows the same 12 factors principles, uh, which also takes config as an environment variables, which also works exactly in the same way like your production application works, but actually it's just executed once. It's not just running all the time like an API or something. And in that case, developers can review the changes. You can do automated tests for these changes. You can test them on first test environment, not on production. You can also apply them to UAT environment, and only then, after all the quality gates passed, all the automated and manual checks are done, you can push it production. And because you tested everything, you carefully did it, you reviewed it before, it will be high quality and very low risk to break something in production. And compare it to the person going and doing manual changes on production. Someday it will be a disaster. So that's all about main 12 factors from the original 12-factor application methodology. However, I have a 13th factor today for you, which is a bonus. Even if you follow all these 12 factors, there's still something missing for your application. Because if you do serverless development, if you create applications and deploy them by yourself, if you are in control of the whole CI/CD and configuration management, then you also operate your application. You support them, you maintain them in production. And for this, I believe you're really curious how your applications are doing. Are they doing well in production? And for this, for example, in Azure, you probably would like to use Azure Monitor. You would like to see metrics and logs. You would like to have alerts configured, maybe some auto scaling, a lot of stuff. So all these fancy and nice features of the cloud, they are only possible if you follow 12 factors when you build your application, but also they are really important to run your application in production, because we build our applications to be run, to operate, to bring continuous business value for our business stakeholders. And that's why we are not only care about building the application, but we also care about having this application running well. And if we use application insights, it can give us nice insights of what's going on with our application. If we have distributed application, like we have different instances calling each other, in application insights application map, we can see what's going on. We can see latency, we can see how many calls between them, and we can see that, okay, red means bad. Yeah, we need to look into it. We need to check out what's going on. Is it a performance bottleneck? Are there some errors? Is it something wrong after we redeployed our application and there's some configuration mistake was made, which is hard to catch when you deploy to a different environment, because we tested everything, but actually we can only see configuration in active work only when we deploy to production. Yeah, so 13th factor is observability. And we need to think about observability as it's not just monitoring, it's not just metrics and logs. So it's not just data and information. Observability means knowledge and wisdom. So observability means it should be actionable. So application insights, application map just gives us some data and information. This particular instance talks to this one, and it doesn't give us a lot of actionable insights. But the whole observability, all the other services in Azure Monitor, which we can use, alerts, some particular metrics, they can help us with observability because they can give us actionable wisdom, which is based on some knowledge as well. So this is the quick recap of all 12 factors. And now it's a good time for questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Vlad. This was good to see this 12-factor app methodology. I have a couple of questions for you. First, I want to compliment you on the 13th factor, because indeed you can do all the logging what you want, but yeah, if you can't get knowledge out of it, then all the logging is completely worthless.
Yeah.
So I'm happy you added that one. So this 12-factor app method, it's already quite a couple of years old, right? So it's not something relatively new, I think, right? It's like
it's
10
not
years
new,
old or something.
I guess so. More than 5, definitely.
Yeah. So I'm wondering, because I have heard about it, but it's not a conscious thing in my mind, this method. But in your opinion, how many organizations are actually doing these things that you're suggesting? Is it a lot, or is it just a small percentage? Any idea?
It's hard to say. Well, I believe if you're doing serverless, if you're doing cloud native, if you work with Kubernetes and Docker, you have to respect maybe, most of the factors or all the factors. Because if you don't do it, it will be really painful for you.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, you cannot really deploy, because you would need to change the configuration manually somehow. I don't know. Do you rebuild your Docker images for every single environment? which doesn't make sense. So it's really hard not to follow them. But if you're not really doing serverless and cloud native, there is no much incentive sometimes to follow them. And well, modern teams they do it well, but still, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised that a lot of people not following them for some unconscious reason, probably maybe because they didn't know how they can do it better. But now after my talk, you know, and
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah,
Trying
and
to improve every day. Yeah.
yeah, and by the way, it's not my invention. All these 12 factors you can find on 12factor.net website. Here you can see
Yeah.
the
Let me
link.
also put the link in the
Yeah,
comments as well. Yeah, that's a good one.
so there is a lot of more elaboration on the factors and why and what, but I just wanted to make it more practical because they talk a bit abstractly sometimes, and I wanted to make it practical mostly for serverless and cloud native projects.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think it's very valuable. Yeah, so I put the link in the comments, and I think there's even a free ebook you can download with
Could
more
be.
info. But indeed, it's nice if we have some hooks. So how does it actually work with the tooling we currently use and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
look, even more links. Perfect.
Yeah. Also, I have some more
All
links.
right. I do have another question. So you mentioned these days there's also more a shift into DevOps, so also doing more operational tasks. How difficult is that, you think, for development teams? Because it does seem like developers need to know more about operation side as well, or is it about what's your idea about it?
Well, it depends on what your team is and what do you do. If you do serverless, probably you work with simple small workloads. You would like to deploy them separately. You would like to deploy them fast, and probably you would like to deploy them. You don't want other teams or people be responsible for your workloads to be deployed. In that case, uh, well, some teams consider it as a burden, but it's not a burden. It's like you enabling yourself. You are in control of everything you do. And nowadays, you don't need to create a bunch of PowerShell or Bash scripts to have simple CI/CD. You just if you are in Azure DevOps, you just use standard jobs there. In GitHub Actions, it should be pretty simple. I haven't used them to deploy to Azure, but I believe
Yeah, they're
it's
great. Yeah, they're
there.
great.
Even if it's not built in, all this CI/CD stuff, it's pretty easy. Like to build, just .NET build, for example, to test .NET test, to deploy, just easy CLI deploy ARM resource, whatever. I have
Yeah.
never done it by hand,
Yeah.
so it's not a big deal. And actually, you do it once. If you do it right, if you respect 12 factors, your pipeline can be pretty generic. So you just reuse it across many applications. So I I worked with two integration teams, and in one team we had about 30 workloads, and we were deploying them with one single pipeline which we created.
Nice.
In other integration team, we have 18 workloads. We are going to have 30 at the end of the year, I guess. And the same thing, like if we would rely on external people, on other developers, I believe it would be a very painful process. But here we follow 12 factors in our applications. We have not very much complex CI/CD, but still generic and reusable. And it really helps us. It enables us to be in control of everything we do, and we can be moving really fast with that. So
Cool. Yeah, that's super
I
valuable.
must admit that the one that really spoke to me is when you were talking about the dev and the production parity and the whole infrastructure as code, and I just had flashbacks to jobs in years gone by. And I'm going to be honest, it wasn't even dev and production parity. it was 7 different machines running the production workload, and they were all the same. And in actual fact, none of them were the same. None of them was a copy of the other ones. They had slightly different directories, different versions of things. And actually getting that into your pipeline is just an absolute time saver when it comes to figuring out why something's wrong, because you really do then have that parity on it.
Yeah. Well, definitely investment into your like CI/CD pipeline. If you don't overcomplicate it, it will pay out very quickly because you can be focused. If you have proper CI/CD in place, if you follow 12 factors, you can be focused on the value that you create in your application. You will not be like handling all these different issues, tricky investigations, why it worked before but doesn't work now. If you do it properly, you just help yourself to be focused on writing the code and having fun with it instead of
Yeah.
having troubles.
I think it's one question that I have about the thing you were talking at the end about the admin side. I have been through the process of being in teams where we had access to production and we could fix stuff if needs be.
Yeah.
And then you move from that to, again, the whole infrastructure as code, and suddenly you shouldn't be on admin.
Yeah.
And how can I put this politely? There are some developers that really do not like that process because they really see it's like you're taking away my ability to quickly fix stuff and you're causing problems for me. Do you have any advice on how to help developers make that mindset change? Going from the we can do whatever we want on the servers to no. If you do that, the next time we do a deploy, it gets overwritten. You've got to do this
Yeah.
right.
It's a challenge. I believe there is no silver bullet for this. Like we really need to, talk about the reasons, about the principles, what are the risks, why we're doing it, and sometimes you have to go through some pain when somebody broke something, and then you can say, "See, I told you, like we would need to do it differently next time." And also sometimes for some people it's easy if you just invite third party, some pesky security officer which is saying you don't have access to production anymore, and then you can say, okay, sorry guys, we need to do it slightly differently. Well, from my perspective, I enjoy doing it in the right way because this is engineering way. I'm not some kind of a programmer who just writes random code and just throws it to production. I would like to do cool stuff. And cool stuff for me, it's this engineering mindset. I'm not doing it at work for my hobby, at home for my hobby. I'm a professional who builds the software development conveyor, which can work even without me. Like somebody can change the configuration, redeploy it, or we can have these migrations in place and we can properly test them, because even if you automate this migration but you don't push it through CI/CD, like if I'm a developer and you ask me to do it, I will not be keen to run any automated stuff against production, because who will be to blame? It was my fault if I run it. But if I run it through CI/CD with integration tests in place, with like I can analyze what happened, whether did it work properly or not, then it actually makes my life easier as a developer.
I can go with that one.
True. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, Vlad, for these insights. I hope our viewers will look a bit deeper and see how they can improve their process. If you have any questions later, you can also ask them on Discord. Vlad, maybe you can need join as well there to see if there are any questions for you later there as well.
Sure.
I think it's now time for a small break. It's now exactly on the hour, so let's continue in 5 minutes. So 5 minutes past the hour, and then we continue. And in the meantime, we'll test Bruce's audio and video, so we can be ready for the next speaker.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank
again.
you, Vlad,
Bye-bye.
and Cutscenes?
Cutscenes.
Hello.
I'll pull you briefly online so you can test your audio before we go again. But yeah, you're audible, so that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay,
And
share screen.
let's
Bosh,
test your
Bosh. So I'm so
screen.
sorry, Mark. I went back and checked the email and it said CES, so my mistake.
No problem at all. Just happy you're here. That's totally fine. Yes, here it is. Okay, yeah, that totally
Okay.
works. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh, perfect. We are all set. Yes.
All right.
Okay. Sounds good. All right.
So what time? Pardon?
In 5 minutes.
7:05. Okay.
We'll start in 5 minutes. Yes.
Cool.
Okay. I will briefly remove us from the screen again, and then we'll add you again in 5 minutes. So.
Okay.
See you
Bye.
then.
How long am I talking for, by the way? 15 minutes or so.
As long as your presentation lasts. I mean, if you need an hour, then it'll be an hour, and if you need 10 minutes, then it'll be 10 minutes.
Okay. So okay, fine. That's good because I added some slides and I'm not sure what the runtime will.
That's
how
totally
to
fine.
go.
No, that's totally fine.
But, yeah.
That's fine. Yeah. All right. See you in a
Lovely.
couple of minutes. Yep.
Bye.
Hello again. Welcome back, everybody.
Yes, I hope you had a good break, either a bio break or get some refreshments, because we are ready for our second speaker. Hello, Bruce.
Hello, everybody. So this is my first talk. So just first of all, thank you to the host, Serverless, for giving me the opportunity to do my very first one. I work at Ably in the DevRel department, and I specialize in developer education. And my talk is going to be a lot simpler than Vlad's, which is highly detailed. It strips things right back to the very, very important stuff that you got to do before everything, and that's authentication. So I wrote a blog post which discusses what you can see over here. It's using Netlify to issue a JWT to protect an Ably accounts API key. So I think the core component is that we want to stop important stuff from being hijacked. So I'd say the problem statement is really down to this. I was busy working. I'm in DevRel. These messages arrive. This was the one message that arrived, but two arrived like this on the same day. And essentially, it boils down to that last bold bit at the end. And it was a security breach, and it was because the API key was exposed in the Wayback Machine. So immediately, it's like, well, how can this possibly happen? Who would do this? So you may not know what Ably is, and I will explain that later. But essentially, this is what I discovered people are doing. To use Ably, you create an instance. So in the top square is the wrong way of doing it. It's simple authentication. You bring in the JavaScript library, you put in the API key, and then you connect and off you go. So this is the thing that was going on to the Wayback Machine. So this is what we want to cure. So luckily, our SDK it allows you to use an authentication server, and that authentication server will give you a JWT. And it seems like well, that's all we got to do. We need to train our users to do authentication URL instead. So my immediate solution was like, okay, the JWT is going to be the solution. So just in case you don't know, what is a JWT? A JWT is a JSON web token, and that's what it looks like. It's a JSON object, and then inside the object you put the private keys and values, and that gets encrypted, and it spits out this big string on the left. So you'd think, well, okay, great, that solves our problem, but actually it doesn't at all. Fundamentally, there is almost no difference to using a simple authentication string and a JWT. And it at first it was like, that doesn't sound right. And the reason that it is just as insecure is because there is nothing stopping a bad actor from using your authentication URL to get a very valid JWT. And that's where Netlify comes into the picture. So now that you've kind of gotten an idea of the scope of the problem, we can actually get down to making the solution. So this is the simplest architecture that I can come with. The nice thing about a token is that you can interrupt when the token is refreshed. So let's just go over this little architecture. The first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we get our users signing up and logging in. Then we need to check that they are who they say they are. And if we trust them, then we get to issue them a token, which stays alive for a very small amount of time. And then it refreshes. And this is the way to do token authentication. Simply issuing a JWT is not enough to secure that that the user is valid. So this is what we're going to do today, and I'm going to walk through it. I'm going to limit the code, the discussion about the code, because there is a blog post related to this. So if you want to know more details about that stuff, then yeah, there will be there'll be links to where you can read the full blog post. Okay, so you're going to need three things. The first thing is you're going to need an Ably account. Now, I'm presuming that a lot of people don't know what Ably is. So I'm very, very briefly, Ably is a massive network of WebSockets. Essentially, that's what it is. It is sugar around WebSockets. So you pay the company and they give you this global infrastructure which you can use very, very easily with a very, very simple SDK. So you'll need an Ably account. The free tier is very good. You will also need a GitHub account. And finally, and obviously, you will need an account on Netlify. So if you wanted to follow along, that's what you need. And then I'm just going to leave this this QR code up for the end of the talk. If you want to read the details of the code and the serverless functions that make the whole JWT possible, then that's the URL we will go to. So I've structured this just this little walkthrough in a way that as we go through each steps, it will raise errors, because it's in the solving of the errors that you kind of get to see how the whole thing is put together. So so let's get going. So this is the very first step over here. This is I've logged into Ably as a person on my personal account, and the very first thing we need to do is we'll create an account. Okay, take a little while. Over here we have our API key. The second, so that's our first step. The second part is we're going to need to fork the repository that we've created to facilitate all of this Netlify identity serverless function. And the easiest way to do that is, okay. So the reason that we're forking this will become obvious a little bit later on, but I just wanted to point you at the README. The README is a distilled version of what I'm doing now and also of the blog post. Gives you a little bit more background onto that. But the important part is that you fork it onto your personal account. There we go. Create the fork. And the reason we do this is because when we connect it to Netlify, if you haven't used Netlify before, it's going to want to attach to your personal GitHub repository. You won't be able to attach it to the Ably repository. Okay, so we've created our fork. Then we'll go over through to Netlify, and this is again, I've logged in with my personal account. We're going to import, authenticate and import it. There we go. So that's my private fork. This takes a little while, and we deploy the site. Now, I'd like you just to, while this is taking its time to get up and running, just think for a moment how long it takes to create a system that allows you to log on a user, send a confirmation email to their account, plus the link for them to confirm who they are. And if for whatever reason they were to later forget their password, you would need to have a forget your password function as well. So that is not an insignificant amount of work, and that is really where Netlify speeds up everything, because they just take all of that responsibility away from you. So my app has been built, And you can see that just by having a look. And I'm going to be doing quite a lot in the console. So let's get that up and in front of you. Okay. I hope that you can see that. Right. So what I'm saying here is the very first thing that we need to ensure is that we have a user who we trust. So we're going to sign up, and immediately we're presented with this error. And all this is saying is that when we look at our application, the identity services haven't been enabled. So let's switch that on. It lists the people that we've currently got, which is nobody. And now if we were to return to our Netlify instance, click sign up, immediately we've got this entire user registration workflow. So Bruce, Thomas, and I'm going to use this one, Bruce. Okay, and we'll use sign up. Right, it's taking care of the confirmation. This particular registration box is just plain, plain text and password. But you can, with very simple following the documents that Netlify provide, you can get the whole GitHub, Google, or I think it's GitHub and Google SSO logins. So you wouldn't even need to type this in. Let me check that has come through. Please bear with me. I'm waiting for the, okay, there we go. Verify your email address. That's just arrived. So we'll put it into a new tab. Same one. So our user's just been confirmed. We can now authenticate. Great. So if we have a look at our identity service again, our user has now been qualified. So when we authenticate, this is our second error. And this, the Ably network is very, very good at telling you what's failed. And it's telling you that the client configured the client configured authentication provider request failed. Okay, and so what Ably network will do is it'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and it'll try a number of times to establish that connection, and then it'll just stop trying. So it seems pretty obvious what is missing over here, and that is we haven't given it any details. So to do that, we go over to our site settings, and in our build and deploy section, we've got to add some environment variables. So let's go right ahead and do that. I know that we're going to be adding 3, and I know that because it is listed over here. So I'm just going to be copying and pasting these environment variables in, and I'll show you where I'm getting them from. So the screen that you're looking at now is the one that we used to create our account. It's the onboarding process, but what we actually want to do is we want to go to the details of that particular Ably app. Okay, and we'll grab our API key because that is definitely the first one we're going to need. So we'll put the API key over there. Turn it on so you can see. Our second one, if we have a look at the README, is ably capability, and I'll explain exactly what that means. When you create an app in Ably, you get two keys straight off the bat. First one is the root key, and the second one is a highly limited key. So the Ably capabilities is the property that we want to be most strict about. So in this case, we're going to go with since we're not really going to be using channel messages per se, we'll go with just something that's quite generous. And in this case, what I've done is just said that we will grant a channel called channel name the permissions to subscribe and publish. And that's all. And our last environment variable is the TTL in seconds. And this is 3. So, okay. What does this mean? So if you remember, I showed you earlier the, actually we can look at it over here. The TTL is that how often we are going to declare that the token is expired and force the user to return to us and request a new token. And if they're invalid, then we can pipe them down through an invalid user and get them to re-log on or refresh their session. So that's what that TTL is addressing over there. And that pretty much takes care of all of those. So now you would expect that when I clicked authenticate, it would immediately connect onto our network. However, it hasn't. And this tripped me up for quite a while. And what I discovered is that for those environment settings to kick in, what you have to do is redeploy it. So we'll go through this little process. Doesn't take all that long. And here we go. We're almost there, and now our site is live. So refreshing this and authenticating. So you see, I'm hoping that there's enough frames for you to see it turn orange and then connected. And if not, there we have it. Okay, great. So now we know that the whole thing is in orchestration, and we've got users using our app. Let's pretend it could be something like, I don't know, Discord or something like that. And then one of our moderators spots somebody behaving really badly. So we want to get rid of them. So this is where the Netlify identity really shines. So I'm doing this manually, but you would probably want an automatic system to do this. We return to the instance of our app, and we return to the identity section. And we've only have one user, but obviously you imagine there's a whole list of users. You go into the user and then continue to edit their settings. And you can then add any sorts of metadata to their roles. And in this particular case, what we have is we've decided that if I enter a very specific string, which in this case is called banned, then we stop them from connecting. So it looks like a drop down, but it isn't. So you go banned. The important part is to press enter, because otherwise it's not a registered string, and then you save that. Okay, so now let's go and see if that has worked. So I'm not going to wait for the timeout to kick in. I'm just going to manually do it by refreshing the page. So our user is valid because they're logged in, and if I authenticate it immediately disconnects it, and it tells you that the client configures has an authentication problem. that's how easy it is to have bulletproof security. So I'm going to go through the process of destroying all of these so that you can see me clearing out my API key, because I've done possibly the worst possible thing you can do and use an API key in a live stream. So let's return to our user and just make sure that this works both ways. We'll unban them and save. Okay. Return to our instance and reload again. And there you are. It's done. So the thing that really impressed me is the speed at which I was able to get this done. The entire doggone workflow is all contained in just one tag. That's it. Plus, obviously, you want the Netlify identity JavaScript. So to get really good a serverless function and protect my API key from any bad actors, it took me literally a day to do this entire presentation and the code behind it. I'm not going to talk about the actual serverless function itself, other than to say it's the same response object as AWS Lambda. And the only thing that is different is that Ably have got a special type of JWT. So in this payload over here, we use obviously things that are specific to our product. So there's a function that we create differently to a normal JWT. And what else is there to say? Now, this is the core, I think, message that I want to get through. I've used Ably because I work for Ably and they pay my salary. But the important thing is that it doesn't. It's not about Ably. It's about the idea that you can use these very, very quick workflows where other companies have invested quite heavily in providing things like the Netlify identity to you as a tool. So if, for example, you have a similar type of product which has an API key and also has the opportunity to use tokens or an authentication URL as a function of an endpoint, then you can pretty much clone the GitHub project that I've just been using and have the same kind of security endpoint up and running effortlessly. So that's pretty much the end of my talk. I'm just now going to show you how to destroy each of the instances, and we'll start with Ably. They're always kind of the same thing. You go to the settings, and then at the bottom there's the red button. Great. So we'll kill that. It gives us a confirmation it's dead. Let's go and check that it is dead. Authenticate, failed. Great. And then it's a different error. And then it's exactly the same thing for the instance on Netlify. Is it this? Yes, here it is here. And that's it. We've tied up all of our loose ends, and that is all I've got for you folks. So I am aware that I got quite nervous and ended up talking really fast. So first talk, first mistake. But if you've got any questions, just fire away.
I think for first talk, that was awesome. Well done.
Exactly. Yeah. Well done, Bruce.
Thank you. I'm like so shivery. It's like I don't know, I haven't eaten. You get that low blood sugar. I'm like, whoa.
And you did typing. I'm going to be honest, when I do live coding, I use snippets because there's no way I can type.
Oh,
Exactly.
Yeah, I didn't because I use Linux. So you get a third, okay, I typed just, that one thing. It is true. But in Linux, you can just highlight something in the middle, click, and it'll just copy it into whatever has got focus. So I cheated.
Cheating's good.
No, this is the way, Bruce. This is the way. This is perfect. No, for me, the Netlify and also Netlify Identity is completely new, right? So I'm completely new to this platform, but it does look really intuitive to use, to be honest. I mean, and in general, I like these service providers where you can just host your function, host your static site, and also providing some additional features like identity is, I think, a really good choice of them to do so. Yeah.
I think there are other platforms that do provide something similar to it. I'm kind of just going through them all because I'm traditionally from front end. These platforms that give you these free tier hostings, there's quite a lot of them popping up. Like, I mean, there's Vercel, there's Netlify, Cloudflare do an amazing free tier product, and then there's Renderify, all of those things. But the one that is by far the easiest for $0 is Netlify, without a doubt. So simple to use, so simple to implement. But very, very exciting stuff is happening in the Jamstack space, and the entire Jamstack ecosystem is all hinging on serverless, right?
Mm-hmm.
So happy days.
Yeah,
it's just you're getting I love it. I do.
And making it easy for people. Lowering that bar for getting started is so important.
That is exactly it. And easy to do it properly. Because like at the beginning of my talk, I was showing you that somebody had literally been following the code examples and copying and pasting it into production and then, committing it on to Git. And that's a really easy way to do it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the amount of time it took me to do this entire presentation and yabbing at the same time, it's a very short amount of time to get bulletproof security.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is, which I didn't realize until I asked for a review internally of this presentation, is that JWT doesn't protect you at all. It is intervening when it expires. That's where you get protected.
Yeah.
JWT is not some kind of a magic thing, and I think that wasn't 100% clear until it was pointed out to me. And I would kind of, if you fundamentally front end like where I came from, you may also not know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the infrastructure people will have all of this knowledge to hand, but yeah, the thing is, it's very easy to do it wrong, and it's nice to be able to do it easily and do it right. I guess is what I want to leave people with. Do it right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's where sessions like this are really perfect for, right? Because sometimes the documentation is not the best way, or maybe it assumes some things or provides an easy way but not the most secure way. So it's very valuable to have these kind of things. Yeah.
And there's a really lovely saying. It's like a false sense of security is worse than no security at all.
Exactly, because you think you're safe, you're not, and otherwise
because you think you're safe.
Yeah.
And then like somebody picks it up in the Wayback Machine and they just siphon off. You're paying for them to siphon off basically your money or your quota or whatever that API provides, right?
Yeah, and I think especially if you got things like GitHub Copilot and everything else, if you've got a public repo, you really do not want to be putting your stuff out there accidentally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool.
Be safe, people.
Yeah.
Do it right and do it easily.
Yeah.
Cool. No further questions, Bruce, but thank you very much for this session.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it a lot.
It
was good fun.
All right. Cool. All right. Let's do the closing now then. So, Bruce, see you again soon.
I can stop sharing.
This is good. Yeah, thanks. All right, Stace. Two very different sessions again. I like it when the sessions are quite different, because there's probably some sessions that are good for some and probably not for others. But I feel this was a good, let's say,
Yeah, so
distribution.
this was a
of different
nice spread of
levels
information there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, thanks again to both speakers. Feel free to still ask questions on Discord. Also, if you're watching this later on YouTube, feel free to join our Discord later and still ask questions there. That's totally fine. And again, if you feel like helping mentoring for Bit Project, check out the links we put in the comments. And if you want a discount or even free ticket for Azure Lowlands, also please follow those links in the comments.
And we will see you there.
Exactly, yeah. Because since we're both speaking there, right? So we are definitely there.
I'm not speaking this time. I'm organizing this time, so it's
okay. Well,
I just have to look for you as a speaker. That's my job this time.
Perfect. Right, and for the rest of you, next month should be a hybrid meetup again, somewhere in or around Amsterdam. We'll share more information as soon as we know that. So until next month, everyone.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.